An alien race has arrived on Earth to meet with the planet's leaders, but the governments are refusing to listen, resulting in one woman having to convince the aliens not to invade the planet. In 1928, a man is camping in the Karakoram Mountains when he notices a bright light outside his tent. He steps out to investigate and finds a big glowing sphere. The sphere glows really bright, and the man passes out. When he wakes up, he finds a strange mark on the back of his hand, and the sphere is gone. In the present day, Dr. Helen Benson is teaching astrobiology to her class at Princeton. After her class, she arrives home to look after her stepson, Jacob. She notices that Jacob has found and kept an old razor that belonged to his late father, who was a soldier in the army. Next, Helen gets a call from someone who tells her that she will be picked up soon. She doesn't understand, but then her doorbell rings, and she opens the door to find a complete police escort waiting for her. She asks them what this is about, and they say that they will explain it on the way. Helen leaves Jacob with her neighbor and gets in the car. Next, Helen boards a military helicopter alongside a bunch of other scientists, and they all theorize why the government is suddenly demanding their presence at such short notice. They all arrive at a military base in New Jersey, where Helen runs into an old colleague of hers named Michael. Michael explains that he is the one who requested her presence. Helen asks what is happening, and Michael says that everything will be explained in the conference room. In the conference room, all the scientists are informed that a large object has been spotted in space heading straight toward Earth. What's curious is that the object is not in gravitational freefall, but it is correcting course as it arrives. The object is set to collide with Earth, and the impact point is Manhattan. The military is going to try and fire missiles at the object to stop it in its path, but it is arriving at such a high speed that the chances of success are slim. One woman asks why Manhattan isn't being evacuated, and Michael replies that there just isn't enough time. The object will collide with Manhattan in an hour. Right now, all they can do is plan for the aftermath, and that's what all the scientists are here for. Since Jacob is in Manhattan, a distraught and emotional Helen calls him one last time to speak to him, because she knows what is about to happen. Jacob, who doesn't really feel any attachment to Helen because she is his stepmother, cuts the call short. Next, the scientists all get in the military helicopter again and brace for impact. However, the impact doesn't happen. It is revealed that the object has slowed down in its approach. Helen looks out of the window and sees that object entering Manhattan. It is a giant sphere of light. The sphere settles down in Central Park, and the scientists arrive to inspect it. Just then, a heavy contingent of the military and police arrives on scene and desperately radios for orders. The lights in the sphere focus at one point, and a being comes out of it. The being steps toward Helen, and panic ensues in the military ranks as they desperately try to figure out what's the best course of action. Amidst the confusion, someone accidentally shoots the being. Another gigantic being made out of metal emerges from the sphere and makes a piercing sound that knocks everyone out. It also disables all the electronically operated equipment. It performs some kind of gesture towards the first being and then goes into a still state. Next, Helen, Michael, and the other scientists bring the first alien being into an impromptu hospital room, and Helen says they need a surgeon to come in and stitch up the bullet wound. As the surgeon operates on the alien, he says that the outer layer of the alien's flesh is made of unknown substances, but inside, the being is exactly like humans. Then, the outer layer of flesh starts coming apart. Helen asks Michael to give her a sample of that. After all the outer flesh comes apart, a completely human body emerges. Next, the being awakens and panics, and Helen calms him down by telling him that he is not in any danger. The Secretary of Defense, Regina Jackson, holds a meeting where she informs her team that their military satellite has been compromised, which means that the aliens know everything there is to know about humans. Meanwhile, more spheres like the one in Central Park are arriving at different locations all over the globe. Regina assumes that since their military satellite has been hacked, this means that the intentions of the aliens could be hostile. Regina arrives at the facility where the alien is being kept and speaks to Helen. Helen explains that the outer layer of flesh around the alien closely resembles human placental tissue, which makes sense, because in order to survive Earth's environment, the alien had to be born here in a human form. The alien wakes up and asks for water, and while Michael gets him some, Regina arrives to speak to him. Regina asks him questions like who he is and why he has come to Earth, but he seems more preoccupied with getting the hang of the human body. Helen asks him what his real form is like, and he replies that it would frighten humans. Helen asks him if he has a name, and he replies his name is Klaatu. Regina asks Klaatu if he represents a civilization, and he replies that he represents a group of civilizations. Regina asks what is the purpose of his visit, and he says that he will explain his purpose to a gathering of world leaders, which is happening not far from here. They understand that he is talking about the UN. Regina says that she cannot allow him to go to the UN and asks once again, what is his purpose in visiting their planet? Klaatu simply answers that this is not their planet. Next, Regina says that they are going to drug and interrogate Klaatu. Michael objects to this, but surprisingly, Helen offers to conduct the procedure. It is revealed that the only reason Helen offered to do the procedure is to tamper with it. She replaces the government's interrogation drug with saline. Regina tells Klaatu that they are going to transport him to a different facility. Klaatu argues that he has done nothing wrong. Regina says that he invaded their airspace, and the giant robot that came out of the sphere hurt military personnel. Klaatu says that the robot acted in his defense. It activates only in the presence of violence. Next, Klaatu is brought to a room for a lie detector test. The interrogator asks him if he is aware of an impending invasion on planet Earth, and Klaatu refuses to answer the question. He looks at the polygraph device, and it starts malfunctioning. The interrogator touches it and gets electrocuted. Klaatu uses the electrical connection of the polygraph device to hack all the CCTV cameras at the facility and sound the same piercing noise from before, knocking out all the security personnel. He takes the interrogator's suit and leaves the facility. Amidst the chaos, Helen grabs the sample of flesh she took earlier and leaves as well. Next, Klaatu arrives at a train station, and he notices that his bullet wound is bleeding. Helen is at home with Jacob, and she receives a call from the train station saying that her patient is there. Helen and Jacob arrive at the station and find Klaatu there. He leaves with them in their car. Helen confirms from Klaatu whether he has come as a friend to humans, and he replies that he is a friend to Earth. He asks Helen for the sample of his flesh that she took and rubs it on his wound, which heals instantly. Helen asks him what the next move is, and he tells her to keep driving. Meanwhile, the military attempts to attack the giant robot with drones, but the robot easily destroys them. In the car, Jacob says that they should fight and kill the aliens, because that's what his father would have done. Helen tries to reason with him, but he doesn't listen. Klaatu asks Helen about her personal life, and she explains that she married Jacob's dad a year ago, and he recently died in a war, leaving the two of them by themselves. Jacob's birth mother died when he was just a baby. Klaatu understands that Jacob wishes his soldier father was here to save the world from the aliens. Next, a really old man arrives to meet Klaatu, and it is revealed that he is another member of the alien race, who was sent to live among humans many years ago in order to study them. Klaatu asks the old man for his report, and the old man says that the human race is destructive and cannot be reasoned with. Klaatu says that he will begin the process, and the two of them will leave as soon as possible. The old man says that he is staying. Klaatu reminds him that if he stays, he will die. The old man says he understands. Klaatu asks why is he willing to die among humans after he just described them as destructive and unreasonable. The old man says that it is hard to explain, but there is still another side to human beings that he has fallen in love with. And while he always thought that human life was miserable, as he is getting old, he is glad to have lived it. Meanwhile, the military places huge containment walls around the giant robot. Next, Klaatu has Helen drive him to a forest in the middle of nowhere. He goes deep into the forest and finds another one of the spheres, which emerges out of a puddle. He touches the sphere, and it activates. Helen secretly watches all this. As the sphere activates, so do all the other ones all over the world, and animal species start getting drawn to them. Videos of the spheres start emerging on the internet, and in one of the videos, Regina notices that there are octopuses and squids floating in a sphere. Next, the spheres around the world start leaving, except for the one in Central Park. Jacob and Helen see a sphere leaving, and Jacob realizes that Klaatu is an alien. Helen demands Klaatu to explain what is happening. Klaatu says that the Earth is dying and the human race is killing it. Helen asks if Klaatu is here to save them then, but Klaatu replies that he is here to save the Earth, and Helen realizes that he is here to save the Earth from humans. Klaatu says that there are very few planets in the cosmos that can support complex life, and this one cannot be allowed to perish for the sake of one species. He says that other civilizations in the cosmos have been watching and waiting for humans to change their ways, but it didn't happen, and now they are intervening. Just then, a policeman arrives and tries to arrest Klaatu, but Klaatu rams the car into him. Jacob is upset that Klaatu has killed the policeman, but then Klaatu uses his powers to heal him and bring him back to life. Helen says she knows that Klaatu can stop this if he wants to. Klaatu replies that he tried reasoning with their leaders, but they wouldn't listen. Helen says that those people aren't the true leaders of humanity. She adds that she'll take him to a leader of humanity. Meanwhile, Regina realizes that all the spheres were an ark, collecting species to save them from the flood which will eventually follow. Helen brings Klaatu to the house of a Nobel Prize-winning biologist and philosopher, Carl, in order to have him speak with someone who actually represents the best of humanity. Meanwhile, the giant robot is brought to a secret underground military facility for inspection. Jacob sees news on the TV that Klaatu is a wanted man and calls the authorities, unbeknownst to Helen. Meanwhile, Helen, Carl, and Klaatu discuss the future of humanity. Klaatu says that humans treat the planet like they treat each other, and they lack the will to change. Carl argues that civilizations have to reach their tipping point, their near destruction, in order to find the will to change. This is that moment for humanity, and Klaatu is taking it away. Before Klaatu can answer, military helicopters arrive, and they have to leave. Carl tells Helen to change Klaatu's mind, not with reason, but with her humanity. Klaatu, Jacob, and Helen try to run, but Helen gets caught by one of the helicopters, and then Klaatu destroys the other two. Jacob tries to run from Klaatu, but Klaatu isn't going after him in the first place. Jacob almost falls, and Klaatu saves him. They continue their journey together. Meanwhile, at the military facility, workers are setting up a diamond drill to investigate the robot, when it is revealed that there are millions of tiny microscopic insects multiplying inside the drill bit. Regina speaks to Helen, and Helen tells her that she is the only one who can change Klaatu's mind. Regina doesn't believe her. At the facility, the worker notices that the drill bit is deteriorating quickly and tries to get out, but then his suit starts deteriorating as well. He starts bleeding, collapses, and dies. They notice that the restraints of the robot are being eaten up by the microscopic insects as well and flash the entire chamber. However, the flash does nothing. The entire robot disintegrates into billions of microscopic insects, and they destroy the entire facility and head outside. Military vehicles fire at the mass of insects, but it has no effect. The more they fire, the bigger the mass gets. The mass of insects starts spreading everywhere, destroying everything in its path. Regina arrives to meet Helen. She tells Helen that this is off the record, but she's letting Helen go so that she can change Klaatu's mind. Michael goes with Helen. Jacob and Klaatu get in contact with Helen, and Jacob says he knows where they can all meet. Next, Jacob and Klaatu arrive at the graveyard where Jacob's dad is buried, and Jacob asks Klaatu to revive him, just like he did with the policeman earlier. Klaatu apologizes and says that there are some things that he cannot do. Jacob is heartbroken. Helen arrives, and she and Jacob bond over their shared sense of loss, and Klaatu is moved by this. He says that there is another side to human beings, and he can feel it now. Helen begs him to give humans another chance. He says that it will come at the price of their way of life. Next, Michael, Helen, Jacob, and Klaatu arrive at Central Park, where unbeknownst to them, the military has set up one final attempt to destroy the sphere. The bombs explode, tilting their car over and killing Michael. Klaatu, Helen, and Jacob get out of the car and see that the mass of insects has reached them. They hide under a bridge, but it's too late. The insects are already inside both Jacob and Helen. Helen asks Klaatu to just save Jacob, but he is inspired by her self-sacrifice and helps both of them. Next, Klaatu walks toward the sphere through the swarm and touches it. As he does, the swarm of insects dies and they start falling all around. He disappears into the swarm. Electricity around the world shuts off, and all technological inventions such as cars, trains, and even watches come to a halt. Klaatu's warning came true. The human survival has come at the cost of their current way of life. Helen and Jacob watch as the last sphere leaves Earth. The end.